On a suddenly not so casual free Friday, it is NFL Week 16. It is the day before Christmas Eve. It is Circa Millions the show. It is Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave out of the water. It is the shark. It is the gun. It is the odds fellow. Gus picks. Fresh off a happy hour. Shades on. Sweaters on. Vibes up. What's going on this evening, my brother?
Man, did I have myself a happy hour. Actually, I went outside because it's so damn cold. I put my tongue on a metal pole, just like the Christmas story. It's stuck. I'm bleeding. I am okay, though, because I need to give you boys the picks of the NFL slate. Week 16, Christmas Eve style, Christmas Day style. Odds fellow is in the building wearing a winter hat because he doesn't have heat in his house, but he's also wearing the Christmas sweater like myself. What's going on, Odds fellow?
Can't afford the heat because I'm over here trying to do my best Miles Austin impression all night. If you didn't hear the news, that man, that assistant coach is banned for a year. Former Cowboy, former wideout. He was getting into the gambling. That's what we're going to do. Hopefully none of you are NFL or professional sports employees, but we do have winners. I'm excited about this slate. It's a little messy, but we're going to have some fun.
Absolutely not waiting around. We hope people in the chat are having a beautiful Friday afternoon. I made the comment on Twitter. It is the holidays. People are off of work. Crack a beer, have a glass of wine, pour a cocktail, hang out with us, sending you guys the best vibes. And the best vibes potentially are turning up in the first game we are going to discuss. We're going to go to the gun first. The New England Patriots come home off one of the most egregious, irresponsible losses in NFL history. A run around, throw the ball, lacking in focus play, if you will call it that. Really an incomprehensible loss to the chagrin of Patriots fans, Julian Edelman included, in Las Vegas last weekend. Come home here, catching the Bengals in what appears to be a trap spot in a road sequence of a big win against Tom Brady last week. Next week, big-time primetime game against Buffalo. Guns picks. Open the broadcast with an official.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be fading the Bengals, and I know this is probably Russian roulette for myself, making this kind of bet, but I love New England in this spot. I mean, they've lost 3 out of the last 4 games. Yes, I know. Crazy fluke touchdown at the end of the game, kind of not knowing the situation for Jacoby Myers. I kind of feel bad for him. Also, the running back there, pitching the ball. I don't know what happened in that game. It kind of all fell apart in one sequence there. But we're talking about Cincinnati as well here. Cincinnati is on a 6-game win streak. They're coming off a comeback win against Tampa Bay. They were down 17-3 at the half, and they ended up winning the game 34-23. Complete great comeback for Cincinnati, but a complete collapse for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the same process. So take that with a grain of salt here. Now, Cincinnati, while a tough team at home, on the road, they're a different story. Not as good. Only a plus 2-point differential, minus 56 net yard average. While New England at home this season, plus 2-point differential, plus 23 net yard average. New England is 7-7. They need this win to stay in the playoff hunt. So there is a lot of motivation on the New England side, especially coming off a bad loss on the road to Las Vegas. And they have 2 divisional opponents on deck here. So while Cincinnati, they're sitting fat and happy here, sitting on top of their division right now. They don't need a win necessarily at any point in week 16 here. So, but when you look at Cincinnati, also a big opponent on deck with Cincinnati, complete Mac, like a big, not just a sandwich, but a Big Mac. You know, the triple decker sandwich. That's what Cincinnati has on deck here. They get a home game next week versus Buffalo. Let's just talk about that situation. Then they have a divisional game after that. So that's going to be very important for Cincinnati to go beat Buffalo, because that's going to kind of set everything into tone as they get into the playoffs here. So Cincinnati also has historically struggled against the Patriots here, who are running red hot lately. And New England, so hungry, so starving to get that win to keep them in the playoff hunt. I'm going to be taking New England not only on the +3, but I'm also going to sprinkle a half a unit on the money line here. So New England +3, 2 units, and +148 money line for a half a unit as the play.
Anthony Latino drinking a White Claw over there. He didn't get the memo. This is 10-degree weather in the Northeast. He's drinking the July 4th cocktails, but
he's drinking a Viva. He's drinking a Viva. He's drinking a Viva.
Viva's only.
Viva's only.
I gotta turn it.
We're brand loyal.
No alignment. Yeah. A little alignment here. I'm not on the money line yet. So he's got to get me there. That might be a couple White Claws later, but it's two teams going in the opposite direction. So the line was interesting to me, right? Why is this team only hanging 3? It's not even, above a field goal, 3.5 or 4. At the end of the day, this thing is going to come down to defense versus offense. It's actually the first time Burrow has played Belichick in the Pats, which I thought was pretty interesting. Just that AFC matchup, for whatever reason, hasn't happened in their careers. No Hayden Hurst for Cincinnati, not the huge component you think of, but he is their starting tight end. He's their 4th best receiver statistically. So I think that, hurts the offense and some of the balance a little bit. You have the 2nd-ranked DVOA defense against the 5th-ranked offense. The Pats' offense is the problem. They're struggling at 25th. They've been putrid, as we expect. But at the end of the day here, I think in a tough weather matchup, outdoor, on the road in that sandwich spot, that defense, I think, does step up and do enough. And then at that point, you just need Mac Jones to do something to keep it around the field goal. That's why the money line scares me a little bit. Is this Cincinnati second half comeback magic late again? Could be. That's why I think those 3 points are important. Maybe a little ATS regression for Cincinnati. They're the league best 11-3 against the spread. They stand alone at that number. That's a big number, and that's because they've gotten on a little bit of a streak here lately. So I like New England here at the +3.
Yeah, and I looked at this, and obviously it is a great spot to fade Cincinnati. The only reason I'm off this game is I just feel like that New England has a bit of an inconsistency at home outside of the division as a favorite and an underdog. And I did find one corollary, which I did not like, which was early season against the AFC North Baltimore on a very similar line, +3, +3.5. They did lose the game 37-26. And I know Cincinnati is hot, but we've discussed this every single week on this show. That's what Cincinnati does. They come out flat for 8 games, and then they're expected to sustain. And, of course, trying to get the 1 seed in the AFC here potentially is a big thing. So I'm not in the game, but, of course, conversation is absolutely dominant in this life. And my first official play, jumping off it, I bought this hat in the middle of the fall. I haven't worn it since, but the buy hat is engaged. Cleveland Browns -3. 1 unit official, and a lot going on in this game from both sides. And of course, Cleveland only getting Deshaun Watson back a couple weeks ago. Lackluster on offense, to say the least. But I don't think that's going to be a problem in this game. The books have this game graded to be an under. 32 is the line. There's going to be a lot of weather. And I think it's more so if you look at New Orleans outside of the division, this team is not very good outside of the division on the road. They're 0-3 last 3 ATS, and their last 2 games on Sunday in inclement and hostile defensive environments, they have been unable to score the football. Go back to week 12 at San Francisco, their first shutout in, I believe, over 20 years, a 13-0 loss. And I think more applicable to this game at Pittsburgh within the AFC North on the road, 20-10 loss, a game we did have Pittsburgh correctly on that weekend, Sunday, November 13th. And again, if you go to the Cleveland side, Cleveland is really fighting for the last spot in the AFC playoffs. They have a lot of motivation. They have a great defense. Don't team going on the road, strong number. And you saw what they did last week against Baltimore and a backup quarterback, 13-3. We had suggested this last weekend, Cleveland would clean them up. I think the momentum really does carry it in this game. The motivation is there. And New Orleans in this spot is absolutely A-list fade material. 1 unit official, -3. The odds fellow, alignment, I believe.
Yeah, I'm starting off hot, backing the two of you. But I think, I asked myself, is this the weekend Cleveland finally gets going, that offense, Deshaun Watson? But honestly, it doesn't matter. And I think that's what the total's telling you and some of those previous games you mentioned. For me, there's one specific matchup that I think is key, especially with that weather. I'm going to be on the under as well. I got it at 32. It was at 32.5 right as I started looking into it. So I think that thing may continue to plummet. You're going to have 27-mile-per-hour winds at kickoff, wind gusts somewhere in the 35 to 40 mile an hour range. Temps probably in the 15-degree range, and I think potentially some snow. So what does that mean for me? I like to look at game scripts and figure out how that's going to play out, especially in a matchup category. That spells running game for me. And you have two top running backs here, that two-headed monster with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, for the Browns. They're the 8th ranked offense rushing the ball per DVOA, matching up here against the 23rd ranked rushing defense per DVOA. So in that type of weather environment, in a team, clinging, in the Cleveland Browns to try to get going, it's the perfect scenario, right? So under 32 for me, and -3, especially, again, if you can get it while it's still within that field goal range. Hopefully we don't get a push, which has happened to me way too many times this short NFL season. But -3 alignment, and then also adding a unit for me on the under 32 because of that weather situation that we mentioned and a lot of the New Orleans struggles that Shark just alluded to.
Yeah, absolutely. And jumping to the next game, we're going back to the gun. New York Giants on the road, back-to-back road games off a gigantic divisional road win on Sunday night, which we had correctly at Washington. Going to Minnesota, a Minnesota team we have discussed all year, a team very comparable to the Tennessee Titans in that they have been scorching hot for way too long. And you guys see what's happened to the Titans. This team might not even make the playoffs. Minnesota is a different conversation. They will win the NFC North and go to the playoffs, probably hosting a game, and that will be hostile for the opponent. But this team is playing with fire. They have tried to lose game after game this year, and it didn't get any worse than last week, coming out down 33-0, and somehow backdooring a Colts team that just cannot hold a lead. Giants on the road here in the playoff picture. This should be a great game here at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 1 o'clock, Fox Sports. Guns picks, an official.
Yeah, I'm going to be going with the Giants on this one. It's probably the first time I've taken the Giants all season long. I mean, you can track me back to week 1 if you want, but I don't think I've taken the Giants at all. But I think this is a perfect spot to take them, especially going against a team that I have faded consistently all season long with the Minnesota Vikings. Some positive, some negative. But let's talk about the Giants here for a second. Now, the Giants are coming off a divisional road win versus the Washington Commanders. I want to say football team, but I got to call them the Commanders now. 20-12, despite losing the net yards battle. They lost -99 in the net yards. But Minnesota's coming off one of the most dramatic wins ever in the history of the NFL. They were down 33-0 at one point in this game. They ended up winning 39-36 in overtime versus the Indianapolis Colts. It was an epic comeback, and they absolutely dominated the net yardage battle, plus 177 in that regard. Now, Minnesota is that team that you can't figure out. For the record that they have, and you look at the stats, it makes no sense. They should be 500 at best, but they have a 0-point differential, -45 net yard average for the season. They play to the level of their competition, essentially, is what the stats tell you. But you look at the Giants here, they're another team that makes no sense for their winning record as well. They have a -1 point differential, -42 net yard average, and I think they have a winning record as well. But now the Giants' struggle has been primarily versus divisional opponents here. They're playing in arguably the best division in football. And I think Oddsfellow will agree, as he was wearing a Dallas winter hat in his house while he has no heat. However, when you look at them versus non-divisional opponents, they have a +1 point differential, -9 net yard average, 7-2 straight up versus non-divisional opponents. When you go and look at Minnesota, on the other hand, -1 point differential, very similar, -75 net yard average, and they are 8-2 straight up. It's crazy how the NFL works with these numbers. However, if you actually look at them versus NFC East opponents, guess where Minnesota is? 1-2 straight up versus NFC opponents. The only team they beat this season, they've played them all except for the Giants, the Washington Commanders. That's the only team that they beat. And it was a close loss, by the way. I don't think they covered a spread versus an NFC East opponent. Also, you got to look at the Giants here on the road. 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 road games, and they're 10-4 against the spread overall this season. Minnesota coming off a massive comeback. And by the way, I heard a trend on, I can't remember what podcast I heard it on, but teams that come from a double digit, they were down double digits at the first half and they come back to win the game. They go into the next game. Typically they lose the spread, and it's 35% coverage rate when those teams go into the second half. So look at New England. The Giants here. They're ready to win. They have a lot to play for to get into the playoffs here. Minnesota really has nothing to play for. I don't think they feel that they're going to be able to take over the Eagles in this spot, and they're going to rest up. They probably have a few more divisional games to kind of like control the division, but no, we're going to be going with the Giants here, and I'm going to also take them on the money line. So give me the Giants 2-unit play +4, and also money line +172 for a half a unit as well.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with this. As you mentioned, the Minnesota Vikings have really been abysmal against the NFC East this year. Obviously, slightly different dynamics here. Go back early season at Philadelphia in week 2, prime time. We know Kirk Cousins is horrendous in prime time. He certainly was that night in Philadelphia, 24-7 loss. And a game you mentioned at Washington, they pushed a -3. I believe there was some CLV ambiguity with their that final line. So some people did cover or not, but a push in most markets, 2017, a very aggressive backdoor. And as you mentioned, go back to last week. When you exert that much energy in the second half of a game, it's hard to bounce back from that. That was like a Super Bowl style win, really, if we're being honest. And, it's comical to say that against the Colts, who are not a Super Bowl caliber team, but to exert that much energy and have the biggest backdoor win in NFL history, it's just a huge emotional high. And to bounce back off of it against the Giants, and then, as you mentioned, close the season with 2 consecutive road games in the division at Green Bay and at Chicago. Giants probably are the sharpest look in this game, in my opinion, but I will not be on this because of one particular reason. When you look at the Giants on the road in a back-to-back sequence, their worst environment all year was at Seattle, and that was, maybe not coincidentally, off a very impressive win the previous week in Jacksonville. So now you get a road sequence off of 4 consecutive divisional games. So Guns made a great point about the Giants also being in a tough spot here. This is a letdown for the Giants, too, as much as I hate to say it. For me, this emerge free play. I would lean the Giants, but this is really, really tough stuff here. We're going to go to 4 o'clock here. Throw it back to the odds fellow. Odds fellow taking the Denver Broncos. Excuse me, not 4 o'clock. Sunday, December 25th.
It's a Sunday game. Yeah. It's a Sunday game.
Christmas Day. Russell Wilson and the boys did not think they'd be sitting here 4-10 facing off against a 4-10 Rams team. I think the NFL in general did not schedule this game for the middle of Christmas Day, expecting both these teams to be so terrible. But the odds fellow has an official on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe I'm back in Broncos country, but maybe Russ can cook up a Christmas miracle for us now that he's back fully. I honestly would have loved it more if it was Brett Rypien, and I think that team was rallying behind him a little bit. This is a deep team. This is a team that had, big time aspirations, whether it was just the playoffs, obviously some Super Bowl futures that people ripped up. But at the end of the day here, it's really a fate of the Rams as much as it's backing the Broncos. They have no home field advantage. This game is in LAC. Since Stafford went out about a month ago, they've gone 1-4. The only win was that Baker comeback, that ridiculous game against the Raiders. Things only got worse really when you started looking at them without Cooper Kupp. And again, I especially in this type of weather and these types of environments and late season, I'm looking a lot defense versus offense. And my hope and my cap here is that the defense is going to overcome a lot of these offenses. But in this case, it's the perfect defense, right? Denver, 4th DVOA against a Rams offense that with those weapons missing, like I said, is struggling. They're eliminated. They don't have their own pick. That's the only thing, draft-wise, tanking-wise, that maybe works against us here. But if you look at that stretch of games that I mentioned, they scored 10 points against Kansas City, 23 versus Seattle, 17 versus Vegas. That was the win, 17-16, and then 12 versus Green Bay. Again, I mentioned Denver is 4th. Those other defenses that I mentioned in order, KC's 24th, Seattle's 25th, Vegas is 32nd, last in the league, and Green Bay is 22nd. So although Denver's 4-10, they're 6-8 here against the spread. That's the bottom quarter of the league. There's a bunch of teams bunched up there at 6-8. I just think at the end of the day, at a number that's 3, The defense, again, will do enough, and I just need Russ in that offense to maybe get out of their way. But they've looked better. They looked better with him that last game or two before he got hurt. So I'm hoping that continues, and I think the Denver defense is going to completely shut down the Rams offense. So that's a Christmas Day spectacular there for you. So
yeah, I would completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I think, you go back even just to last week, you look at how Denver's performing against this particular division, 24-15 against Arizona. We suggested it last week on the show. We said Denver's probably the sharp take. And as you mentioned, Los Angeles here is just, really just cashing their game checks and kind of just hanging out at this point. There's just no motivation. Coming off a Super Bowl, this lackluster, backup quarterbacks, Guns and Oddsfellow with a synchronized drink. That was a beautiful thing. You guys should enter the Olympics. Synchronized drinking. It's a beautiful opportunity.
It was sharp.
It was absolutely incredible. And to
top look of the show. Top look of the show.
Just absolute talent level. I'll give you guys a 9.1 in terms of skill, and I'll give you a 9.8 in terms of execution. It was fucking fantastic. And anyway, staying the course. We're going back to 1 o'clock. We're going back to the gun. Chicago Bears at home yet again outside of the division, yet again against a playoff team coming in here on a big line. We had it last week. We covered it against the Birds. We had it a few weeks prior against Miami. Now the Buffalo Bills come in here in a trap spot, a letdown spot, big game next week. Guns picks going back to the well, taking Chicago at home outside of the division, +9 and official.
It feels like Buffalo goes into this game feeling like they're going to have a little bit of a bye before they hit like the gauntlet of the last 2 games of the season. Let's talk about Buffalo here. They're coming off a big win here. 5-game winning streak, by the way. They have a +7 point differential, +38 net yard average in the last 4 games. And they're also coming off a close divisional home win in a revenge spot as they lost to Miami on the road. 32-29 +41 net yard average in the game. Now, Chicago is absolutely just like crashing completely, but they're competing. A lot of injuries are going on there with Justin Fields. So we have to take that with a grain of salt here. 7-game losing streak and off a non-divisional home loss to Philly. Garbage touchdown, got the cover for us last week. Philly losing 25-20. Absolutely crushed in the net yards, though, -173 in that regard. Now, Chicago has done well versus non-divisional opponents this season. And what I mean by that, they keep it close. -3 point differential, -24 net yard average for the season. Chicago is a running team. Justin Fields, as long as he's in that lineup, you have to take him seriously. He has exactly right now 1,000 yards rushing, 7 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. He is the leading rusher for the Chicago Bears right now. 5 point, and the team in total, great rushers on that team. They have Herbert, they have Montgomery, 5.4 yards per carry, 206 yards per game at home. This team absolutely just wants to ground and pound you all day long. Now Buffalo's defense has been gashed against the run this season. If you actually go and look and pick out teams that really like to run the ball, they give up 4.9 yards per carry to Baltimore, 6.7 yards per carry to Green Bay, 5.1 yards per carry to the New York Jets, 5.9 yards per carry to Minnesota. So everybody says oh yeah, Buffalo has a great defense that can stop the run. It's not necessarily the case, especially if you're dealing with a good team that likes to run the ball a lot, and they have a mobile quarterback for that matter. Now Buffalo has Cincinnati and New England on deck, so it's just a double stack of very competitive games that have effects of their positioning in the playoff. So they may be overlooking this game on the road to Chicago. So it's not only a sandwich. This is almost like a Big Mac type of sandwich. You know what I mean? Like a triple layer type of deal. Also, look at Buffalo, what they're doing right now. Last 8 games, they're 2-6 against the spread. And it's more predicated on the fact that they're always heavy favorites above a possession. But they're playing all these close games with everybody. Doesn't matter what the competition is. So purely situational play for me. I'm only going to bet a unit on it. I think Chicago does cover the number. I think they keep it within the possession. So give me Chicago +8.5, 1 unit special.
Yeah, no, you said it. And Buffalo has just taken on almost like the Kansas City environment, big lines, non-covers every week. You go back through, these are all tight games. 3-point game, 3-point game, 3-point game again, 3-point game again. It's just all tight stuff. The only game they covered with any sort of authority was at New England, going back to Thursday night, December 1st, 24-10. But even that game was not highly impressive. Josh Allen and these guys should be scoring more than 24 points every single game. I don't care if you're playing at Bill Belichick. This offense is that good. And totally outside of the box, this just occurred to me. This reminds me, going back generations, of the biggest show on turf it was Mike Martz, Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. That team was so run and gun and so good for a period of time, and then they just stopped scoring. I don't know if you guys remember the Rams back in that period. And I remember as a fantasy guy back when I was like 11 years old thinking to myself, why can't they score anymore? And it's weird. But Josh Allen started this going back early season with the red zone interceptions. He got a little big time in his mind, I think. And I've said this. I love this kid's game. I love his mental makeup. But he's trying to force throws way too much. And I think that could keep the game close. I love Chicago. You guys know I've backed them 4 or 5 times this year already. My only fear here, as I was talking to you guys off the air about, is I think they're running a little clean in these outside of division spots. The game against Miami, they were very fortunate to cover by a hook late. And last week, same thing against Philadelphia. They did score the last touchdown of the game inside of 3 minutes in the fourth quarter to cover. They also do get a bit of a look ahead. I'm not sure how much of a look ahead it really is, obviously, for a 3-11 team not going to the playoffs. But they do play a revenge game at Detroit next week, and they play Minnesota after that. So just like we were talking about with one of the previous games, this takes on a bit of a funky environment off a big cover. Now they get Buffalo, 2 divisional games to close the season. There's just enough of a counter for me not to be on Chicago, but you better believe I love Chicago. So I think Guns, you're on it. I just couldn't get there. Something about it was a little
bear down, Shark. Bear down.
It's probably an underlook too. I mean, that's where I would lean. Again, we talked a lot about weather and this storm that's moving through, especially the Northeast and a lot of the United States is a little messy right now. I think that thing opened at 45.5. It's at 40.5. And these are 2 pretty prolific offenses. Obviously, they can get it done, defensively in different ways, but these are 2 high-powered offenses. So to see that total and that thing trending downward, that's where I would lean. It's probably tough. It's probably super sharp. Could be fun to look in game too for that.
Yeah, and I think one final point in this game with that element, that does help the Bears significantly with the Justin Fields run game, and the Bills, trying to air it out. It's not going to be functioning that as well here. So Justin Fields.
And the only other point I'd say is if you're looking for teaser legs, to me that's a massive teaser leg because you're going to get past 2 touchdowns, which is crazy value.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
Couple more 1:00 games here. We'll try to get through these quickly because we don't have anything official on them. I think one of the least agreeable games from an entertainment standpoint this weekend is a divisional game in the AFC South here. Texans versus Titans. Titans without Tannehill cratering down, now only 7-7 on the season. Really, we're looking like a playoff team for a while there and just have fallen off the grid. Texans sitting here with the worst record in the league, getting ready for a number 1 overall pick, 1-12-1, 1-6 away. You do get a Texans revenge game. Texans actually played Tennessee fairly tight at home earlier this year, losing 17-10. The line is short for Tennessee. They were laying 1.5 on the road. They come back here less than a field goal. They are a field goal right now. This is telling you a Texans story, crazy as it may sound. I think the Titans are pretty capped. I think Malik Willis is a hard buy here. I don't mean that in a good way. I mean, it's hard to buy him here. And I honestly would lean the Texans in this game. And you guys heard me last week. I said take the Texans against the Chiefs. Texans are scrappy. They're well coached, as much as that might sound crazy for a 1-12 team. This team is lacking in talent. It's not lacking in the ability to inspire to play at their peak ability for this roster. If I had a free play here, and I think, again, part of the reason why people like to sports bet is to juice up a game that is this lackluster. So I think people might want it, throw $20 on it, take the Texans, laugh about it, crack a beer, Christmas Eve. Why not? Next play, we're going back to the gun. Washington Commanders coming on the road, 4:00 at the San Francisco 49ers. Line has hovered around a touchdown all week. It appears to be under a touchdown now, which I believe is probably sharp action. I don't think the public is coming in super heavy, fading the 49ers, who obviously are smoking hot with a great defense at home. This line is telling you yet another defensive battle this week. A lot of low totals this week. Levi's Stadium, Commanders on the road, 7-6-1, a fairly impressive 4-2-1 on the road this year. Guns picks officially on +7. Talk to me.
Yeah. Give me the Washington Commanders on a 2-unit banger here. Let me tell you why I'm going to be on Washington here. Washington's coming off a divisional loss 20-12 to the New York Giants. We already talked about that one before. But San Francisco is coming off a road win in division to Seattle 21-13 plus 104 net yards for the game. And San Francisco is coming in here just absolutely red hot right now. 7-game win streak. I think if you need a loss right now, this is probably the time to do it because you're going to go into a significant playoff run here. And I want to see the San Francisco 49ers to end up at least near the NFL Super Bowl championship. Now let's talk about Washington here. They've traveled well this season. They love to travel. They have a plus 1 point differential, plus 29 net yard average. They are also great versus the pass. They do really great. 182 yards for that one, and they have a 10.4% sack rate. So they get to the quarterback. And by the way, Chase Young is coming back this week. They haven't had Chase Young all year. And they've been able to get to the quarterback without him. Imagine with Chase Young. I don't know how many snaps he's going to get. I know he's going to get some playing time, but I think it's going to be an absolute factor in this game. Now, Washington overall has not done well versus the division. They have a minus 6 point differential plus 24 net yard average. However, I did some digging and I want to look at the Heineke era of the Washington Commanders. And most of that was due to the Carson Wentz, because Carson Wentz is absolute garbage. He is Zach Wilson type of garbage. But with Heineke, this dude from ODU is absolutely a banger, dude. Plus 4 point differential, plus 62 net yard average, and 4-1 straight up versus non-divisional opponents. Washington shows up when they play non-divisional opponents, and it's absolutely apparent here. Now, a lot of key injuries on the San Francisco offensive side that we have to make note of. They're probably going to play in this game, but you have to understand that their health is in question. Brock Purdy has a rib injury right now. That's going to hurt his throwing. And also Christian McCaffrey is also hurt as well. Shocker, Christian McCaffrey being on the injury report. So he's dealing with a leg injury. Now you have Washington just fighting for their playoffs lives right now. They are gripping and grabbing, trying to get into the playoffs here, where San Francisco is sitting here too fat and happy. They've already clinched the division. They're probably unmotivated in this spot here. I really don't like once you win the division. I don't think teams really want to play for the number one spot. I truly believe that teams want to play week to week and not get that rest there. That is my opinion. You take that with a grain of salt here, but I think Heineke is going to be behind center. He's going to play well with this defense. They're going to get Chase Young back. I think this is a perfect spot to take Washington. I didn't take him on the money line. I kind of like a little bit of an itch on the money line here, but I get him at +7, so I get him at above a possession here. So give me Washington +7, and it's going to be 2 units for me.
Yeah, any comments on this one?
It's probably the one of the games we disagree on, but not drastically. I mean, I think it's such a tough spot for both teams, especially motivation-wise for the Niners, and the Commanders still need to win it. I just worry about the talent gap. The Commanders did get hot there for a stretch. They beat some teams they probably should have beaten and played well against them. This is a big difference in terms of the matchup. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. So I don't disagree with what Gunn says, but from right now, for me, the Niners are such an upward trend by team in terms of where I think they can go in the playoffs. I think, they're 2 of the 3 teams in the NFC that I can see in that NFC Championship game and probably going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Guns makes a lot of great points, and I'm not adding this officially yet, but I'm getting very close. I really like Washington in this game. I'm looking at this in a lot more detail, but if you really start to go through their schedule, and we've talked about this all year, but preseason expectations in the NFL, you got to throw them out because things change so quickly in the NFL. So you start to go through their road schedule. A week 2 loss at Detroit. People at that point in time were saying, wow, Washington's terrible. Guys, look at how good Detroit is now. That's not a bad loss for Washington. Then they went into Dallas, still with Carson Wentz, lost the game 25-10. That game, Washington outgained them, had more time of possession and more first downs. But Carson Wentz did what he tended to do in the back end of his starting career, turn the ball over. And then you come into the Heineke era, outright win as a dog at Indianapolis, outright win at previously undefeated Philadelphia, back that up off a situational high with another cover at Houston, who's scrappy ATS at home, who just covered against Kansas City last week, and then a tie at the Giants, which is a real tight divisional spot. So now they come off a loss. The last time they had a home loss, it was a tight loss to Minnesota, who's also good, and they went on the road as a dog and beat Philly. You get the same dynamic here, and you get San Francisco, as Guns mentioned, on a sustained winning streak. Dub 7, changed quarterbacks. Brock Purdy's running kind of hot right now, I got to say. He caught Tampa Bay on the road where they don't play well. Tom Brady was awful. And then he went into Seattle last week, and the game got out of hand early. Seattle did not cover the spread. That was a Joe Public special. The public was all over San Francisco, and there was just a couple small window plays that really skewed that. Now they come home, one random game outside of the division, a little too hot, then they play Vegas and Arizona. This is where I think San Francisco could lose the game outright. I'm looking at this with significance, and you guys know what that means. This is probably going to become official on Saturday afternoon. Loving this look. I think we're 6.5 now. And again, if sharps are moving the line against San Francisco, significant analytical strength here. This is a great look, Guns. I like this a lot at plus 6.5. Next place, we're staying at 4 o'clock. Probably the marquee game to watch on the entire card this week. Dallas Cowboys hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, this game loses a bit of its juice because Jalen Hurts is not playing, but insert Gardner Minshew, and the line is still moving against Dallas. A lot of contrarian action on Philadelphia this week, and I think there's a lot of question marks. I'll give it to the Gun first. Answer the question on the home team, I believe.
Yeah, speaking of questions, I want to answer this question. I am a bourbon guy, by the way. I usually drink Miller lattes and a little bit of bourbon. So, yeah, you read me right there, Detroit.
That's what's on deck. That's what's on deck. That's what's on deck.
That's what's on deck. Like, I'm not going to do it before the show because I could get a little bit out of control. But let's talk about this game here. I like Dallas here, minus 4.5. I think this is a perfect revenge spot. I mentioned it to our chat last week. I think Dallas is going to murder him, especially after a egregious road loss to the red-hot Jacksonville Jaguars. And for me to say that coming out of my mouth is it feels weird. To say that Jacksonville could be absolutely red hot. But all right. So Dallas has won 4 out of the last 5 games here. Coming off a road loss, like I said before, they dominated the net yards. Actually, they were dominating the net yards for that game. So they just had the biggest, flattest of flat spots. But that's because they have the Philadelphia Eagles coming up. Philadelphia is off a road win versus Chicago. Kind of flat in that regard, but not in the net yards. They had a plus 173 net yards for the game. Now, the biggest key point here is Jalen Hurts is not going to play in this game. He has a shoulder injury. I don't know how serious the shoulder injury is. It's serious enough to the point that you can tell that the coach is more concerned about the playoffs than he is about the regular season because they are only sitting with 1 loss this season. And when you have Dallas, they need this win more than Philly does. Gardner Minshew is going to be starting in this game. First start of the season, by the way. And I know he is a dog. I do love him. Shout out Washington State. Shout out Mike Leach, RIP. But that, like what he's done as a starter, whatever team he's been on, he's absolutely shown up as a dog. Not in this game, my friend. This game is way too big for your britches. Now, Dallas wants this bad because it's a revenge game. They lost to Philly 26-17 on the road, but they also won the net yardage battle in that game, plus 47 net yards for the game. When these two teams meet, if you actually go into the history of the matchup, the home team is 7-2 against the spread and straight up. Now, Philly is 3-8 straight up and against the spread versus Dallas dating back to 2016 as well. So Philly did get the win in the first matchup. It really leans me to believe the way the line is set right now, it's going to be a Dallas ball game here, especially coming off that bad loss last week. Dallas is just going to be purely more motivated. They're coming off that road loss. They're a favorite versus divisional opponent that they lost to in a revenge spot. I got to be taking Dallas here. It's an all box checker here. So I'll give me Dallas -4.5. That's the line I get it at. I would take it up to -6.5 on this one. 2-unit special for me. Dallas -4.5.
Yeah, and the hat on and the fandom fully engaged. What's going on here?
Yeah, not the buy hat, the fandom hat, the warmth hat, the winter. It's approaching 0 degrees out there hat. Muhammad hates the Cowboys. That must be an Eagles fan in there. So we got to give Muhammad some love. The Eagles have looked good. That pains me to say. I grew up.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Watching some bad Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb, years of dominance. Everyone's like, "Oh, Cowboys front runners." I was like, "No, man. Quincy Carter is what we lived through." Look, it's a tough spot I think Guns lays out a lot of good points. It is the Cowboys revenge spot. The Cowboys need it more. They want it more. That might be some of the injury stuff. I think these guys are going to show up for Gardner, though, and Gardner's obviously a capable backup. I don't think the Jalen Hurts thing, he's not a complete system quarterback, right? But they have weapons around them. They have a great offensive line. They have a great team. They have great depth. So I think it's going to be a battle. I lean over a little bit. Both these teams trend a little bit towards the over, even again, insert Minshew. And I think they'll be able to get it done. There's just so much contamination between the record. Even Dallas doesn't necessarily need the game. Dallas is almost locked into that weird spot where they're the top wild card team and probably going to have to play a putrid Tampa or Carolina or New Orleans, whoever the hell wins the NFC South on the road. So it's a really strange spot. I hope Dallas gets it done and figures out some of their issues because of the motivation aspect. I think it'll be pretty telling as a fan for that team. For the side, it's tough to go in division and lay that many points, but the Cowboys should be able to get it done. So we'll see.
I will say this about NFC East teams. Is like I can look back into history where they play the last game of the season where it may be a team that has no playoff hopes. They're playing a team that has playoff hopes. It's a division game.
They'll show up.
It doesn't matter. It's no different than Michigan playing Ohio State. It's the same type of mentality going into those games. We win these games. Dallas hates Philly. Philly hates Dallas. They want, if they lost the first game, they want them on the next game. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. I just think that Dallas is in the perfect spot right now to go take them over.
Yeah. And I don't have a side in this game, so I'm just going to chat it for a minute here. Guns, you're making the point. Here's the counterpoint. The Birds got demolished by the Cowboys twice last year. So who's going to be more pissed off in this game? This is off 2 demolition losses. They lost by 20 and 25, including the last game last year. And, Anthony made the comment, but he's not wrong. Dallas doesn't really need this game. They really are locked into the top wild card spot. I mean, the comedy and the error almost of the way that this is structured is that the divisional winners do get higher seeding. You got the Bucs here at 6 and 8 with a higher seeding than 10 and 4 Dallas. I mean, I think if they're going to rework that at some point, that would be a good idea. But to your point, Guns, the Dallas Cowboys are 3-0 ATS this year, coming off an outright loss the previous week. They are also fairly good in the division, if you're going to give it that. They should have covered against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day. The Giants got a total garbage touchdown to cover that in the final minutes. Dallas absolutely owned the game. And you go back to the game we talked about with Washington, where Carson Wentz, Washington actually played them to a pretty neutral average there, but Carson Wentz with the 2 picks gave Dallas the cover. So here's the interesting thing about Dallas at home in the division this year. They should not have covered against Washington, and they did cover by 15. They should have covered against the Giants, and they didn't cover. So it's gone the opposite direction of the data within the game both times. This game has a lot of moving parts. I will say this. The line is moving towards Philly. 2x revenge. Gardner Minshew has something to prove. You're going to get a great performance from him to prove something to the rest of the league. It's going to be tight. I'm going to be in Florida. It's my brother's birthday, the old man who bets, turning 32 on a Sunday Not So Casual. Send it Saturday afternoon. We will have this game on. Beers will be cracked, and I will be rooting for you guys and your wagers. But I do think, for me, this game is very tough to predict. And going through a couple more games here, 1 o'clock, going back to the Lions. The Lions have made a lot of money for us this year. I think they've made a lot of money for anybody who's been watching the show and tailing sharp analysis. Lions on the road, yet again, laying 2.5 points at the Panthers. Just talking about the Bucs NFC South football this year is so far down the line of high-level professionalism. This team is somehow still in the running to win the division at 5-9. But a lot of stuff going on here. The team is far better at home. They are 4-4 straight up. And the Lions come in here in a road back-to-back sequence off a tough, tight win in New York last week against the Jets. A lot of stuff going on here. Anthony's nodding. I'll throw it to you first, and let's talk about this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I lean Carolina. I couldn't get all the way there. Guns and I were talking about it. He's like, I dare you to take Carolina. And I told him I only have to fill the void because he took Carolina last week. I mean, somebody explained to me.
I took him on the money line, by the way, too.
Right. Why this line is 2.5. It makes no sense. And to me, that's screaming and saying something. It's interesting, right? Carolina has played so much better since the trades and since the coaching change. They've stayed in the mix. They've lost some games still, but 5-9, Tampa's 6-8. They're still there. Detroit 7-7. Going into that Jets game, which I had incorrect, I'll be the first to say, the road home splits for Detroit were egregious, right? And that's coming into play again off a good performance, and one honestly that they could have and should have and maybe almost lost, right? It was coin flip game, whatever you want to call it. That 4th and 1 play was a great play call from an offensive coordinator that I think is going to be a head coach in the next year or two. And then, Salah mismanaged things going down the stretch. But look, again, looking at the number and looking at some of those home road splits, I just think it could be a letdown for Detroit, but they played so well. I haven't gotten there fully with anyone yet. I do lean Carolina at that number at plus 2.5.
Yeah. Are we confirmed? Is Sam Darnold starting this game?
He should be consistently playing. Yeah, I don't think he's banged up or anything. I don't think they're making a change. So unless there's an injury I wasn't aware of, he should be in the mix.
Okay, so here's my problem with taking Carolina here. If you really go through their last 4 home games, they've been very unimpressive. And in fact, they've been very unimpressive most of the year at home. I said they were 4-4 straight up. I was not looking at the actual construction of that 4-4. Their last 4 home games, outright loss to Pittsburgh. That's unimpressive. Beat Denver, who's terrible. Beat Atlanta, who's not very good. And beat Tampa Bay, who is also not very good. Got obliterated by San Francisco. Didn't cover against Arizona, who's terrible. And also, go back to week 1, didn't cover against Cleveland. They have one home cover early season against Carolina. That was against New Orleans. That was my top play of that week. But again, the key point here is this team is beating up on bottom feeders at home. And last time Detroit had a road sequence, they did not let down in the second game. They came off a very impressive win at Chicago, their first road game in the division win in a long time, I believe. And they went into New York, and people wanted to take New York in that game. And Detroit said, hell no, we're still here to stay. 31-18 win. Come out of New York off a win. Go to Carolina. Honestly, I lean Detroit again. I think Detroit is just of a higher class. I think they're better coached. I think once this team saw themselves win, I said this last week when they hadn't won in so long. It was like a basketball player. When you see it go in the hoop for the first time, you start to believe you can do it. Now they see themselves doing it. They believe in themselves. I think Detroit's a side in this game. Guns Picks, any comments?
I think you love Detroit way too much. That's the only comment I gotta make. And no, I'm kidding with you. I want to make this comment here. Is Shark? Do you have a birthday coming up? Are you Jesus? Comment coming here from 29. Do you have a birthday coming up?
That's to the young Shark, the old man.
I don't bet.
Shark.
Oh, okay, young Shark. Okay, there we go. Let's talk about this game here for a second here. Both these teams are darlings as far as sharps are concerned, right? I mean, the Carolina Panthers are a covering monster. So are Detroit. Doesn't matter if Detroit is the public team. They find ways to cover. 4th and inches against the New York Jets. What do? They score a touchdown. What did they go? Like 50 yards or 49 yards, 48 yards. I can't remember what it was, but they passed to the tight end on a screen pass, got him a touchdown. It's like Detroit's magical. They're just a magical team right now. It has no recollection as far as statistics are concerned. But at the same time, when they made the change at the head coach position for the Carolina Panthers, they changed their whole dynamic as well. Both sides have arguments, and I understand that a lot. And when both sides have an argument and it becomes balanced, to me, it's just a play that you just want to go and sit have some popcorn and watch. I sincerely hope that the Detroit Lions are a team that actually like rises up, especially like Dan Campbell. I love. Like he's an absolutely terrific coach, and what he's done with the Detroit Lions is absolutely terrific. If he had done that with a G5 team in college football, he'd be offered a humongous job with a humongous check like the next year. So I love both teams as far as covering is concerned, and I will not fade Detroit right now.
Yeah, completely agreed. Completely agreed. Final 1:00 game. We're not going to go into detail on this one. Kansas City Chiefs, yet again, laying double digits to a team which is probably going to be the correct side. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but we've talked about this all year, and this is not just this year. This is the last few years. Kansas City as a favorite, and more specifically, a double-digit favorite, horrible against the spread. Seattle should be able to come in here and keep this scrappy. Any comments on this one? And
I think the one way you look at this, because I wouldn't want to lay the points, but I also wouldn't want to take Seattle. The Seattle defense, which was a bit of a DVOA darling or advanced stat darling for a couple week run there in the beginning of the season, has been absolutely terrible down the stretch. So maybe it's the Kansas City Chiefs team total as a way to look at it. I don't know how jacked up it's going to be relative to the rest, but I'd be probably more comfortable doing that than the 10.5.
Yeah, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on this game. We'll keep it moving. The last time they laid 10 points at home, they were laying 9.5, 10 to Jacksonville. They won the game by 10 points. And also the game against the Rams, they were laying 15.5. They won by 16. This is sharp stuff. This is probably hook material or push material here. This is probably the hardest game to bet on the entire card, in my opinion. And that's it for those games. We're going to skip the Ravens game because we got a backup quarterback versus a second starter for Desmond Ridder in his career. There's no information there. That's a dead toss. And we're going to accelerate the broadcast to 8:15 p.m. national game, NFL Network. The Raiders at the Steelers. This is two national fan bases that have huge energy behind them. And this should be a hell of a game. Guns Picks has an official. I have comments, and let's talk about it.
This is an extremely, and I mean extremely, highly motivated game for the Steelers. It goes beyond playoff contention. It goes beyond regular season motivation. It goes beyond the realm of what this game.
Would you call it immaculate?
I would call it immaculate. Yes, that's a good term for it. Listen, Pittsburgh altogether. Like, let's just talk about regular season here. Won 3 out of the last 4 games, plus 4-point differential, plus 54 net yard average in that span. Now, we've already talked about the Raiders a little bit from the New England game. The Raiders came off the most dramatic win I've ever seen in the most flukish ass garbage on the planet, 34-24. But LVR has won 4 out of the last 5 games. So I guess the Raiders, yes, they're heating up here, but they're going to have to play in the bitter ass cold in Pittsburgh. You can't call them Heinz anymore. You got to call them a different stadium. I don't even know the name of the stadium. I probably can't pronounce it on this broadcast here. But you look at the Raiders on the road, they've had their struggles. Minus 4-point differential, plus 7 net yard average away from Allegiant Stadium. But Pittsburgh is a much better team when they have the god, TJ Watt, in the lineup. Since his return, they are 4-2 straight up, plus 3-point differential, plus 58 net yard average. These two teams met last year, by the way, and it has a revenge factor in this one. The Raiders went in there in September when the weather was nice, comfortable, felt good, and they beat them 26-17 as 6-point dogs. Now let's look at the motivational factor here. Not only is it the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, but Franco Harris, the guy that caught the ball, ran it into the end zone, passed away this year. So it's a double motivational situation for the Steelers. And also the coach on this one has never had a losing season with the Steelers. He's been there for this longest tenure. He's brilliant. Like every situation that he's been in, he's been able to put this team in a position to get to the playoffs. And I still believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way they're running right now, with the talent that they have right now, it's going to be a perfect spot to take the Steelers probably all the way through the end of the season here. So I'm going to be taking the Steelers -2.5, and it's a 1.5 unit play for me.
Yeah. And any comments on this one?
No, I mean, I think the Raiders have been an interesting team all year. I know you have some good points on them, so I want to make sure you get into it. I think that I just wanted to give some props and some respect to Franco Harris. It was crazy how the world works and the universe works. I mean, he dies a couple days before that anniversary. They're
playing the Raiders.
Yeah.
And they're playing the Raiders.
I mean, but look, before this, they were planning on hanging his number up in the rafters. So, wild.
Yeah. No, I think this is a tough game, but I mean, I think you guys are making great points. I think there's a significant motivational point with the Franco Harris death obviously coming. Guns, not this year, this week. There's more time.
Yeah, I mean, like the anniversary was now, and yes, correct. I didn't want to say it was this day, like he died on the Immaculate Reception. That's what I was trying to get at.
Oh yeah, 100%. And no, but I mean, I think even more of a motivational factor than the Franco Harris recent death, and of course, so much respect and love to the family and the entire world and the energy behind that. But this is something that's been talked about for weeks in this locker room. They want to get to 500 for Mike Tomlin. He's never had an under 500 season, and I mean, they've been very impressive actually since their bye week. They're 4-2 straight up. Their only losses were divisional tight losses to Cincinnati and Baltimore. I mean, these are classy losses. And the Baltimore home game, I mean, I think we can probably say that's because Kenny Pickett got hurt early in the game. Mitchell Trubisky obviously has not been nearly as good as Kenny Pickett, doesn't have the career arc and the beginning point either. And he came in, he was very lackluster. Of course, they did win last week at Carolina, but this team is really coming. Really coming. I think they're still open for the playoffs.
To note to everybody that's in the group right now, watching this right now, Kenny Pickett is going to be playing in this game. So
that's
it's
a big
not going to be
difference. That's a
Trubisky.
big difference.
So that's a huge difference as far as the quarterback situation is concerned.
Huge, 100%. And I think the Tomlin angle is number one motivation. Franco Harris is 2. I think Kenny Pickett coming back is the third angle in this game. The fourth angle is after the bye week, how efficient they've been. Fifth or sixth angle here is the fact that their only 2 losses were really tight divisional losses to really above average to elite teams. And you get the Raiders coming on the road off, again, that ridiculous win, which it was just absurd. There's no way around it. But nonetheless, it took on a huge emotional high. Raiders go back on the road where they've been awful this year at Eastern out-of-division opponents. The only counterpoint to that particular data point that I have is those were all early games. So theoretically, traveling, it's off their body time. This is a 5:15 body time game, which is far more agreeable than a 10 a.m. body time game. The only counterpoint is the fact that the Raiders have been better on the road recently. Obviously, big-time wins at Denver in overtime, at Seattle in overtime. Should not have lost at the Rams. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, backdoor central. So the Raiders are coming. The Raiders have improved. The Raiders have had problems on the road in this position at 1 o'clock, not 8 o'clock. But I think everything is really lining up for Pittsburgh here. I'm not on it officially, but this will be an 8 o'clock game, and I'm going to be hanging out Saturday night. We might end up going the Pittsburgh route here. So,
as a counterpoint, though, you just mentioned 2 teams with bad defenses. I will say that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. The line here at 38, it's interesting to say that 38 is a high number, but in this atmosphere outdoors with potential weather, cold air, 38 is a high total. So I think you might be looking at an over here as well.
Good point.
Yeah. And a couple more games here on Sunday as we're taking on over an hour in the broadcast shortly, but we appreciate you guys staying with us, obviously. And it's not even staying with us. We enjoy bringing you this conversation. We hope you're having a great night. It's Friday night here. The holidays have come, and it's the best energy. It is Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. First game on the card on Sunday. We will be in the middle of an NBA 5-game slate, and all of a sudden, here comes Aaron Rodgers, 1 o'clock in Florida against Miami. I'm going to throw it to the gun first, jump off this game, and then I'm going to go into some details.
A lot of people are jumping ship on Miami right now, but they need to know the situation with Miami. Miami just doesn't travel. I mean, they want to stay in Florida. They're just like your old grandparents wearing the tracksuits. That's where they feel comfortable and they have their best performance. Now let's just look at Green Bay for a second. We'll get into Miami. So Green Bay is coming off a prime time home win versus a terrible campaign with the LA Rams, 24-12 plus 189 net yard average in that game. Now you have Miami coming off kind of a prime time loss versus Buffalo in division, 32-29 minus 41 net yard average. But they have lost 3 straight road games overall. Miami is just a different team at home. They play with a plus 9-point differential, plus 55 net yard average at home. They are 5-1 straight up at home, by the way. So Miami is just yin and yang. When they get on the road, they just completely falter. They just can't figure out how to win a game. But when they get back home, that is their wheelhouse. That's where they actually excel. But look at the Green Bay in the situation when they're on the road, minus 5-point differential, minus 29 net yard average away from Wisconsin. Now you go into divisional breakdowns for these two teams. Miami versus non-divisional opponents, plus 1-point differential, plus 50 net yard average. However, when you look at Green Bay versus non-divisional opponents, minus 3-point differential, minus 5 net yard average. Also, Green Bay has played more than one AFC East team. Minus 13-point differential this season versus AFC East teams. It was the Jets and it was Buffalo. So those are the two teams they've played. This is the third one. And they have a minus 13 average versus those teams. Now you look at Miami, 12-3 against the spread at home versus teams under 500, and Miami is sitting in the 7th spot in the playoffs currently. So they are trying to fight off New England, trying to fight off the Jets. I guess the Jets are out right now, but they're trying to fight off everybody that's trying to take their spot right now. So Miami is highly motivated to win this game. I guess Green Bay is essentially, but they have to win a lot of games to try to even get into contention in the playoff spot. And when Aaron Rodgers plays in Florida historically, it's just never a good thing. If you have to go back into his history, I mean, he has won games in Florida, granted, but I think he's more failed in Florida than he's excelled. So give me Miami minus 3.5 to win this game off 3 straight losses, 1.5 unit special.
Absolutely. And on a suddenly not so casual Sharp Sunday it will be. We will not be live, but it's Christmas Day. Top play for me, Miami minus 3.5, 1 unit. And Guns, you introed it well, and there's a lot to talk about here. This is the second time this year Miami's had a 3-game losing streak. Let's look at why. 3 straight road games, 2 on the West Coast, at San Francisco, at the Chargers, and then at the Bills. All playoff teams, couple great defenses on the West Coast, and they were on a 5-game winning streak when they went out there. And we told you guys on December 4th, take San Francisco. We told you the Los Angeles game was a toss. And last weekend, obviously a tight one, which I think is suggesting upward movement in their efficiency here. And you start to go through their road calendar outside of the division, they've been impressive. They have 2 non-covers. One was with Teddy Bridgewater, which does not apply here. And one was a 16-10 non-cover against Pittsburgh. Tua's first game back off of that real scary injury when he looked like he was concussed and having some sort of brain injury, which thankfully he's okay. But since then, absolute blowout winner on a similar line, minus 3.5 against Cleveland in week 10, 39-17, and another blowout. It was a cover. They gave up in the second half, but they were up 30-0 on the Texans. If they played 4 quarters, if they wanted to, they could have won that game 75-0 most likely. And you go to the other side of this game, as Guns mentioned, historically in Rodgers' career, very poor in the state of Florida. And I do think people still hold on to both Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers because of some sort of sentimentality. People love these guys for decades, and they can't let them go. They're gone, guys. They're not Super Bowl quarterbacks. They're not
dead. They're dead.
100%. And you start to really go through Green Bay on the road this year. pretty unimpressive stuff. Blown out in week 1 at Minnesota, a non-cover at Washington back when Washington was really not playing great football. They backdoored Buffalo by a very close margin. We just discussed Buffalo before. Buffalo does not cover these big spreads now. Outright loss at Detroit, which was really a changing of the guard type of game for Detroit. A non-cover at Philadelphia. A backdoor cover, 18-0 late fourth quarter. Chicago Bears melt. And now they come into Miami off a home win against Los Angeles, who's terrible with a backup quarterback. This is a horrible spot for Green Bay. They're sustainably poor on the road. This is a great spot to buy Miami, who needs the game for the playoffs. L3, all losses against playoff teams on the road. This is where Miami turns up. I think Miami might blow them out of the stadium. We're on it for one unit official. Miami -3.5. Anthony, any comments on this one?
Not as a counterpoint, but just if the Green Bay Packers do win this game and get to 7-8, look for a messy NFC playoff picture. But I agree with you guys. I think not what I expect.
You make a good point there. So, like hypothetically, if Green Bay does win this game, we need to start looking at Green Bay like further down the road in the next 2 weeks to win out. Well, like we have to like consider that as a possibility. However, as like if it starts being like the Aaron Rodgers, I love him as a public guy. It's like it may be no plays. It may be no plays for those games. So like just take that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it is NFL. Anything can happen, but Miami with extreme significance here.
I'm confident with Miami. 100%. I'm confident.
Absolutely, with extreme significance. And final game on the card we're going to discuss here: Tampa Bay Bucks on the road at Arizona. Yet another game. I think when they scheduled this going back in the summer, they thought this game would have a lot more appeal. I think that the people who schedule this stuff for the NFL assume the Bucks to be better, and they assume the Cardinals to have Kyler Murray in the lineup and to be far better than they are. Both teams are highly unimpressive. This game takes on a lot of ambiguity because of all those points. I don't have an angle on this game. Guns Picks is looking for his bourbon, his White Claw, the 12-pack of beer. And Guns, talk to me on this game, and we'll jump through it.
I'm sorry, I was dealing with a chat. What game were you talking about?
Bucks Cards.
Bucks Cards. All right, let's talk about this game here. So it's a tough spot for both teams here. So you have the Bucks coming off what is the most absolute collapse. You were up 17-3 at halftime. You had full control of the game, and all of a sudden, like you just basically like turn over the ball inside your territory to a good team in the Cincinnati Bengals, and just give away the game almost like you were trying to play for a draft pick. On the same side of the ball, you're dealing with the Arizona Cardinals here. There's a huge mess with that team as well. So I like you're almost watching like it's almost like predicting a preseason game here. So like, are you trying to win this game, or are you trying to lose this game to get yourself into draft position? It's like, what is the strategy for both teams here? It's just like one of those games that you just don't want to be involved in. You don't even want to watch. You're just going to like try to like dissolve like your Christmas wrapping paper with your kids. You're trying to like attach a PS5 into your TV and it doesn't work. Like that's more concerning to me than this game ever. So I'm going to be drinking some whiskey and eggnog and forget that there is an actual NFL game on at night.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go through this game, as you said, it's like an exhibition game. It's horrendous to bet. You look at Tampa Bay on the road. I mean, Tampa Bay has been abysmal on the road. They're 0-4 ATS last 4. Go back to week 6. At that point in time, it was a really bad loss at Pittsburgh, 20-18 outright. An even worse loss the following week, 21-3 at Carolina. And then they got backdoored in Cleveland and Jacoby Brissett's final start real late in the game. Probably shouldn't have lost that game. And then they got absolutely hammered at San Francisco. But, you go to Arizona, the other side of this game. Arizona has nothing to play for. They're throwing a backup quarterback in this game. but I do think this line is just horrendous to be laying over a touchdown with Tampa Bay here. I think if I had a free play here, and of course people are going to want to bet on this game because this is the final game on the card on Christmas night, I would take Arizona at plus 7.5. I think it's going to be a shitty game, as Gunn said, but I do think the Bucs just do not travel well at all.
I will say this though, I did see a couple of notations in the Twitter. This is going to be a game that the books are going to need, and I think there's a lot of public support for the Buccaneers on this one. So take that with a grain of salt here. It's like I'd rather be on the other side with the books, and I think like Shark said, you got to be taking the Chargers in this one. If you're going to be taking this play, I don't recommend it as an official for me, but I think if there's going to be a lean on this one, you got to take the Chargers. Cardinals. Sorry.
From BetMGM, 71% of the money on Buccaneers minus 7.5. I don't know if that was today or yesterday, so it might be a little outdated.
No, the tickets are higher. I think
only one spot, one book. Yeah,
tickets are higher.
Tampa 3-10-1 against the spread this entire year. Shark mentioned those recent splits there, 0-4 lately, but 3-10-1 ATS overall this season. They've been horrendous. That's the worst by far. The second worst team is the Bears at 5-9. The best look I would have for this game is a team total under for the Cardinals. So target a Bucs defense that should play well, wanting to cling to that division lead there. Arizona's got nothing to play for. It's not even a backup quarterback. It's a third-string quarterback. Colt McCoy's not playing. So.
Yeah. So I'm McSorley here. I'm not even familiar.
Trace McSorley from Penn State.
Oh, yeah.
He was a monster, man. He played with Saquon. Him and Saquon were legends.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, he's going to be here. It's 8:20 p.m. on Sunday night, Christmas night. We get to watch Penn State's finest, Trace McSorley, against Tom Brady on the road outside of the division. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. And I truthfully, I always say this, sprinkle a little money on it. It'll make it more fun. I mean, that's part of where there is some fun in sports betting from a very low-level financial standpoint to spice up a game that is really just a terrible game. So
Shark, I will make it official for 1 unit to go take Cardinals just because of Trace McSorley, because I love that dude. That dude made Penn State made me money with him and Saquon in the backfield. It was absolutely electric, and I only do this because of just feeling. That's it. It's like I just feel like the Cardinals are going to run this, and I want Trace McSorley to beat Tom Brady. That's it. That's the cap.
I love it, and 112 in the books, our longest show yet on the year. And I think this is partially due to happy hour. We're not in a rush. It's not Sunday morning. We're not just getting out of bed. Our energy is a little more big. So we appreciate you guys staying with us for an hour and 12, hour and 13 coming up on it. Circa Millions, the show, week 16, the Shark, the Gun, and the Odds Fellow. It is Free Friday. It's a beautiful night. The holidays have commenced. Games will be on Saturday, Christmas Eve. As I mentioned, my brother's birthday. Happy birthday to Jeff, old man who bets, turning a nice prime 32 this year. And, of course, Christmas Day will be an amazing one. I have 3 top plays. Cleveland -3, -3.5. Miami as full detail just 10 minutes ago. And I'm looking at Washington with significance. I want to try to see if we get this line at +7 if it moves back the other direction. Washington is the third play on the radar. I will make it official. I still like it at 6.5, but 2 officials right now, and I will add Washington at the final hour on Saturday afternoon tomorrow. Anthony Latino, the Odds Fellow, Cleveland -3, New England +3, Denver -3, and the Gun spraying the board like the Gun should, having a hell of a campaign. New England +3 and the money line, Washington +7, Pittsburgh -2.5, Dallas -4.5, Chicago +8.5, New York Giants +4, and the money line. And recently added the Trace McSorley Christmas night special in the desert, the Arizona Cardinals +7.5. Beautiful weekend, beautiful times. We appreciate you guys immensely. Sending you the best vibes through the screen. Hope everybody's having a great one. If you're not, send us a DM. We're trying to help people always. We know we've had a long season, an amazing season. The conversation is the best point in time. Guns picks, close them out with some words, and let's enjoy and always dominate in the process of this enjoyment.
An amazing season and a dominating season. Very profitable group that you're staring at right now. We want to wish you a happy holidays because we want to offend every single religion here. But join us every Sunday. 10 a.m. is what we typically do the show, but we're doing a little bit early this week because it is the holidays. And also join us next Wednesday. It's going to be me and the Shark doing the week 3 edition of the College Football Bowl preview. So make sure you not only just subscribe, but hit the bell to make sure you have the notifications on when we do go live. I appreciate you guys. Merry Christmas to the Shark, to the Odds, and myself, and to everybody that has just rode the wave with us, taking a step from the Shark here. Good luck with your bets. Let's win some money. And as always, let's keep dancing.